These photographers made $22,000 in a single month photographing babies, and they're going to show you how you can do the same thing. They've been voted as the top photographers for baby photography in the city of Los Angeles, and I want to welcome Matt and Jessica Cramer to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. So you have photographed over 2,500 babies. You have a flourishing newborn baby photography business, and you've made an incredible reputation for yourself in Los Angeles and way beyond. Can you just tell me, how on earth did you start this business? Like, you two weren't hatched from the egg as newborn baby photographers. How did you do it? Did you have careers before?
That is correct. We're not hatched. So I came from kind of the television industry. I worked in television in multiple areas. And so around 2009, I had, there was a little bit of a recession back then, if you remember, and I had lost my job. And so I had just remembered talking to Jess, like, what am I going to do? I don't want to go back to this. I don't want to do that. And she says, you love photography. You just need to figure it out with photography. So I just started picking up my camera again and shooting, various subjects, put a website out with a couple of family photos that I had done. Okay. And so that's kind of how it started. And Jess at the time was working her corporate job.
Yes, I was in apparel licensing, very corporate job, traveling the world, but, very business oriented, a lot of budgeting and buying and merchandising. And then, kind of when Cole was born,
yes,
our son, he really was our first newborn, right?
Yeah. So my son, I had lost my job. I think it was in December of 2008. But it was a godsend, right? Because I didn't really want to be doing that job. And then my son was born in the beginning of 2009. And all I remember was thinking, oh man, I've got to photograph him. And so I put him on my kitchen island. I put some hot lights up and just a kind of a black fabric. And I photographed him, and that became our baby announcement. Yeah. And so then I kind of remembered looking at Jess going, you think we can do this?
At that point in time, was it intimidating at all when you were thinking, okay, I'm a hobbyist photographer and we want to take that jump into being professional paid photographers? Was that an intimidating or a scary thought for you at that time?
Yes, great, very much so. Because I didn't really set out to become a newborn photographer. And honestly, I couldn't do it without my beautiful wife here. But I just remember thinking, I have a newborn. I'd reached out to a number of wedding photographers, and then I was like, I guess I'm the type of guy, I don't really want to work on the weekends. I wanted the time off. I had kind of wanted a normal, structured life, like during the week. And so I was like, wedding photographer, I don't know about that. And then I was like, oh, I really want to be a wildlife and landscape photographer, but
all right. I like hearing that. Awesome.
I want to be in my Sprinter van traveling the country, but that wasn't really possible with a baby.
Yeah.
And so it was like, then we kind of put on our business hat and we're like, well, what are people going to be paying for? What's always going to be around? So you got weddings and you have babies.
Yep.
And so we said, let's just try and focus on babies.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it evolved in the beginning.
So
then it also really afforded us the time to be there for our child, so we could pick him up from school and drop him off.
Flexible lifestyle for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at the very start, you were making the transition from hobbyist photographer into professional photographer. Did you find any of that process intimidating? Like, you were unsure about how you were going to master camera settings or finding customers? I mean, was that a real challenge at that time?
100%. I always fashioned myself as being a decent photographer. I wasn't being paid. I couldn't say I was a professional photographer, but I do remember just kind of going, how are we going to do this? I mean, I got to make money. I got to make a living. And I guess maybe all photographers think this way, or artists or whatnot, is you have a picture in your mind of what you want to create. And now how are you going to create it? And in 2009, 2010, 2011, there weren't the video tutorials that there are right now. there were some people that had already done very well and been successful in newborn photography. And so really the only option was to do a mentoring session or to do a class with them, but those were expensive as well. And so we were kind of like trial and error kind of doing things.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of nervous tension, going into it. But at the same time, we had each other to kind of lean on.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think it's always, nerve-wracking or imposter syndrome when you first start out on a new business endeavor and, am I good enough? Do I know my stuff enough? And, I don't know if we talked through, but, Matt's the full photographer. He does all the shooting. And then I do all of the newborn props and posing and soothing and handling and all of the beautiful wraps that are in all of our work. So we knew we made a really good team, but each of us had to obviously get comfortable and hone in on our specific roles. And, just doing that takes a little time. And like Matt said, we were able to find an amazing newborn photography mentor, Amy, of Dewdrops Photography. She's incredible. And we loved her style. And because after, a handful of sessions and, maybe a handful of months we were doing it, a little longer, we were like, okay, we need to find a really great newborn mentor and that she can really kind of hone in either our workflow or, are we maximizing our time efficiently? Do we need a better flow? And honestly, when we met with her, when she came here to our home studio, she was more like just gave us the confidence that we were doing it right. And we actually were on the right path to having, successful sessions and happy clients. And so that was really a turning point.
So Amy came into your life, you brought her in, and she was like a mentor and a coach for you. And that was kind of a turning point for you to help improve your self-confidence and give you some extra skills?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So in the beginning, we were using both strobe and natural light. And so I have this home studio where I have some very large windows, and I was literally hanging like huge diffusion sheets, 12 by 12 to block these big windows because it wasn't north facing lights. I'd get that kind of afternoon sun crossing across the light. And I'm like, oh, it's this constantly changing light. And when it was right, it was beautiful. And so then I would, switch to some studio light, and maybe my modifiers weren't large enough. And so my light was a little harsher than I wanted. So there was just like some various things. And so from the beginning to what we do now, it's changed dramatically.
And then when Amy came in.
But then Amy came in and it just kind of simplified the process.
Yes.
It really helped to streamline a session.
And even little things like, there, in newborn photography, there's a handful of bare baby poses that you normally do at the beginning of the session. And when you're first starting out, you want to do everything that you see, right? You're inspired by this photographer who does these poses and this photographer that, does these wraps. And there's all these different, variety. And I think when you first start out, you want to do everything and you want to over deliver for your client and get all the poses in. But then when you kind of like take a look back, step back, and we worked with Amy, our mentor. And it was a full day mentoring, one-on-one, just the two, Matt and I and her. She was like, you don't need to do every single pose in every single session. Like, get your favorite poses, the ones you're most comfortable with, the ones that you like photographing, and go with that and create a flow that works for you. And when you get into that rhythm, it creates so much more confidence. And, compared to when you start where you're just like, am I doing this right? Am I delivering it up? And you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people who are starting out, they have this sense of overwhelm because they look at what is possible. They look at all the great photos online and they see all these different varieties of poses and settings and lighting. And they think that they need to be doing it all. So you're saying that you kind of at the start narrowed it right down. So you were doing just kind of a focused type of photo shoot with focused specific poses.
It did take a little bit of time because I think we were both like give the old college try, overachievers.
Yeah.
And like because I would, with every session, I'd be like, oh, this will look cool. I'll just do this backlit one by the window, and then I'll do this one studio light, and then I'll do hands pose and with all black. And so I
You do everything.
my mind would just be racing with wanting to do everything. And sometimes there were 6-7 hour sessions, and you're just wiped at the end of it. And I think
We're going quickly.
the always
Not sustainable.
we would not last.
Yeah. But like, to Matt's point, we do studio lights, and then we'd open the windows, do some natural light. And then, I was like, we don't need to do that. You need to narrow down to, like I said, the poses that you are comfortable with, that you have perfected, the wraps that I had perfected. There's a twist knot wrap for one look, and more of a rounded, circular wrap for another look, and we just stuck to studio. We switched to all studio lighting.
Studio lighting.
And so, and then you get really good about, okay, what flows best? Let's start with the bare baby poses because they're more sleepy in the beginning of the session. And then from there, let's go to parent shots because the parents, we don't want them fading towards the end of the session. Let's get them more fresh when they're,
Soon after they arrive.
and more, alert as they can be with a newborn. But and then after that, we go into our prop shots. So that is the flow that works, that kind of made its way into our life, and it works now.
Yeah.
Give us an idea now. What has the business evolved into now? Like, what does the business look like? What do you specialize in, and where do your clients come from? How far and wide do they come from? How big has this become for you?
So this business has grown into more than anything we could have ever imagined. I get choked up because I think about when we first started this, how our main goal was to be able to be more present in our son's life and to be able to have a flexible schedule to go on vacation when we want to, or, take off when we want to, pick our son up from school, like you said.
Yeah.
So, this is, and building a reputation in such a large market as Los Angeles just turned into something so much bigger than I think we both ever thought it would turn into. I would say, we specialize specifically, and, our story is that we're a husband and wife newborn photography team. We specialize in newborns for sure. Then we do babies, and we do 1-year sessions. So that's pretty much our niche. And I also work on SEO, and it's a big passion of mine on getting, photography websites ranked. So that was something that I worked on right from the start. But really, I always tell people, when you niche down into something that you are really good at and you really want to focus on, and honestly, the types of sessions that make you happy and that you want to do, try not to be something for everyone. There's people that like a branding photographer, a wedding photographer, a family photographer, and then all the other categories. But for us, we found, I think because, we make such a good team, I'm really passionate about babies and keeping babies comfortable and soothing them and making them look really beautiful for the camera, and then that photographs them beautifully. So we've built this reputation of having this beautifully lit, photography style for newborns that young couples, new and expecting parents can't wait to hire us for, which is awesome.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. When you do provide these photos for your clients, what kind of an impact do the photos have in their lives? Like, what's the feedback that you get? How important are these photos to your paying customers?
These are moments in time that can never be duplicated, replicated. I mean, once you kind of get into this 3-week plus area, the newborn sleepiness and the ability to kind of curl them up into these poses, it's fading quickly. And so I think parents realize that, or some parents realize it when their baby's born. Some parents realize it a week after they're born, like it just sort of hits them. So sometimes we have the availability to get people in last minute. It just sort of depends on our schedule. But all of the feedback that we get is just incredible, from how people are overwhelmed with the photos. And, I guess what I like to hear is, we have certain packages that have a certain number of images that are included in the packages. Yeah. And of course, they have the ability to purchase more images. But then, when people are like, I just can't decide. And
I need them all.
I need them all.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a price for that, but they have the ability to purchase additional photos. And I always want people to get everything that they love. I mean, that to me, that is the most important thing. Not only that they love the photos, but I want people to have everything that they love and want to cherish forever.
I read on your website that you were talking about how important these photos are for your customers. And there's a quote here that when your kids are really young, the days are long, but the years are short. And that these are fleeting moments for parents. And another quote that about photographs that I got off your website, photographs we create for our clients become pieces of their heritage, their family's history, and parents can look back at these images and be taken right back to that same moment in time when their baby was so tiny. So are these like vitally important pieces of art that lends to the family's heritage and history that you are creating for them?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have people from all nationalities all over the world that come here.
Yeah.
And so they'll say, hey, can we incorporate this element from our heritage, whether it's I don't know, Chinese, it's a cultural thing. It could be Korean. It could be
Well, we had like a lot of Year of the Dragon, you know.
Year of the Dragon. But we don't incorporate a lot of outside props, but when sometimes certain things are extremely important to a client, we'll make an exception just to, because we know how important it is to them and how important it is to the grandparents of that baby. And so, and we know that they're going to be looked at years from now. So like, we have a son who's 16 and we're constantly looking back at old photos and videos.
We are.
And so when you're a new parent, you're not looking back at photos of your child because they're just born. But we know that in 5, 10, 15 years, they're going to be looking at these photos and just very appreciative that they have them.
Especially when it's newborn. If you're a parent, you've just had a baby, a mom and dad, you know, you're sleep deprived, you're overwhelmed, you're emotional, hormones are, you know, adjusting for mom still. And honestly, like, it is a very real possibility that they don't really remember that much from that time frame, let alone like, you know, their baby's details, the lips, the, you know, their ears and their little hands and feet. Like, even, you know, we have a photo that's highly requested with dad's hands, you know, cupping their newborn baby, and it will be so hard for them to remember how little their baby was. And so, yeah, these photos are like just a freezing moment in time that is a very emotional moment for parents, right? And we help them remember it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
since these are such valuable products really that you are creating, you obviously at this stage in your business can charge potentially a very good dollar value that's going to be helping you on the business side. Can you tell me when you first started, you know, those very first photo shoots, how much did you charge then and how much are you charging now?
Oh, what do we charge away first? I think so. When we first started,
First, we did model calls.
we did a few model calls, which just basically means that you're throwing it out there. We'll photograph your baby for free.
Yeah, we did
And,
those for sure.
and we'll provide them with a handful of images. So that way we can build up our portfolio. But I think in the beginning, you know, we had to ask ourselves, what is the minimum that we're willing to work? I mean, there's two of us. It takes some time.
It's our full-time job.
We knew that we might be putting in extra hours, right, on the front end during the shoot and the back end. But during the shoot, what's the minimum, knowing all these numbers that we're willing to work? I think we started at like $500, and that was for
$495.
$495 for all the images. And then it'd be all the images that I had, you know, culled it down to the gallery and said, okay, I shot 300 or 400 and I've got it down to 60. And so then I approve that and I go, here's your 60 images.
Yes.
And it just became,
And then it became,
that's a lot of editing.
it was a lot. Yeah. But also as our SEO and our rankings on Google started to rise and our inquiries are flooding in.
Yeah. It's like anything. The demand goes up, you know, so does
And we were, yes.
the price.
Right. So we're so busy. We were like, okay, right. So after a little while, we sat down and we said, what is the minimum price that we want to pick up your camera for and, commit to your full day's work. And then I remember vividly we jumped to $8.95. I remember that.
And it was like, okay, so we jumped the price and then we lowered the number to 30
files. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went $8.95 to 30 files.
Yes, I remember that.
And so it was just kind of this evolving price structure on what are we going to charge. So now I think the minimum to get in is about 16 or
well, we have 3 sessions. So we've also honed down our pricing and our structuring with that. Yeah. So we've got an entry level session, which is a mini swaddle newborn. And that is only shots of the baby in swaddled setups and multiple props. And that is only 8 digital files. And it is our entry level pricing. And so from there, we have then our middle tier, which is 15 files, and then our top tier, which is 20 files, and that includes family.
Yeah, and the average spend is about $2,000.
It's reasonable, very reasonable, considering what you're getting. The product that you're creating is incredible, and it's a lifelong keepsake for you and your family. $2,000 is, it sounds like, even a low price for actually what you are providing.
I appreciate you saying that. I might raise my price.
You probably should, because it adds to that exclusivity that your business provides something that's very special that others cannot.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were to look at other photographers in the market, I think that we are on the higher end of the price point.
For the packages themselves. But I would say a large chunk of our clients end up doing what we call partial or full gallery buyout, which adds a lot more volume and a lot more revenue.
So that's where you're actually providing prints, not just the digital files?
Both.
Right.
Both. So we're in LA, right? So we're not in a small market where a 30-mile radius, you can get there in 30 minutes or under. You could be 10 miles from my home studio and it could take an hour and a half to get here. So early on, we realized we had to be more of a digital file business. Now, even like in-person sales, which is big in this industry, where people come back and there is like this type of sales pressure to, you'll see the prints on the wall and here, buy this one.
Families decide
in the moment which ones they want to buy. I just knew that people are not going to come from Marina Del Rey or from Manhattan Beach. I mean, that's an hour
and a half.
That's an hour drive without traffic.
Yeah.
So it wasn't feasible. So we had to go to a digital file structure. Now I do provide prints and all kinds of stuff and albums, but really it's more of a pushing digital files.
But our main increased revenue comes from, like, for example, a session that has their packages including 20 files, then they want to buy 60. So then we obviously charge for the additional 40 files or digital photos. And then we also offer albums and farm to frames and hanging canvases and metal prints and things like that. But I would say the majority of clients and our extra additional income comes from buying additional files above what's included in their packages.
So most of your clients, really the product they receive are just the digital files. And then your upsell to try and increase your average order value is by offering them more digital files.
More digital files and props.
And of the products, I would say albums and grandparent brag books are the biggest.
Albums and grandparent brag books. What is a grandparent brag book?
So we have a main album that is of extremely high quality. And then, through any of the large printers, we'll be able to make a smaller album that the price point for us and just the overall quality is just a touch below the photographic paper on the main album. So we offer these lower price point albums as a keepsake or a giftable from the parents of the baby to the grandparents.
Yeah.
So that way they can share the love of the session with them.
Right. And do you actually advertise all of these packages on your website?
We do not have pricing on our website. That's something that we don't have. I think there might be what our average spend is.
How are you selling then? Are you selling over the phone or you send an email package? How is that done?
So Tim, I got to be honest with you. I'm a great salesman, And I have sold in person, and I have made people go from not wanting to spend anything to dropping, this is years and years and years ago,
Yeah.
to dropping $400, $500, $1,000. However, when it comes to me in my own like home studio and trying to sell, I have more of a soft sell approach. I am just more like, I'm here to provide a service. I'm here to provide prints for you. I'm not going to put the hard sell on anyone. I just try to let the images speak for themselves.
The first point of selling is our initial inquiry email that goes out, right? So we get all of our inquiries that come in, whether it's through Yelp or Google or Instagram or wherever they're coming from. And I have a very in-depth and thorough initial inquiry response email that is very clear on the packages we offer, the pricing, of each package. If we offer additional files and add-ons, and that and I attach a pricing guide PDF to the email as well that they can review. So really, that email sells it. That's where they get all the information. I'm extremely detail oriented, and no one really ever has questions. They'll just reply, okay, I'm ready to book, and this is the package I want, and here's my address. Let's generate our contract and invoice and move from there.
Right. Now, I'm on your website right now. We're taking a look at some photos, and these are cake smash photos. This is for 1-year-olds. Tell me about these photo shoots because they look pretty fun. But maybe as the photographer, they're not quite so fun as this baby makes a mess.
Well, it just sort of depends. So
Cake smash, people love them, but we have to set up very honest and upfront and transparent expectations.
managing expectations.
That they do not always go happy smiles and, quickly. There can be a lot of fussing and crying. Some babies want nothing to do with the cake. They can't stand the frosting on their hands. So it really is 50-50. But like this little girl right here, that was great. She came in as a newborn, and we had a beautiful session. The family's amazing. At the end of every newborn session, we obviously say like, hey, come back for, the 6 to 7 month old time frame or for the 1-year cake smash. So they decided to come back for the 1-year cake smash. She said she really wanted to kind of do more of a yellow in sunflower theme, I think. And that little girl, she loved her cake, and we got some great shots.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So some love the cake and others don't.
Yeah, once a baby gets to 1 year old, some of that stranger danger element starts to creep in.
Yes.
And although they were here a year ago, or maybe even 5 or 6 months ago, they're obviously not remembering us or anything. So it's really a team effort. It's not just me and Jess. Sometimes it's me, Jess, and the mom, or me, Jess, and the dad, or the grandmother, or we're using a phone and we're getting we're FaceTiming grandma, and because that's what the baby's responding to. So it's a team effort to try and get responses, right? And so it can be a lot of work. I mean, sometimes we say we're just basically jumping monkeys or clowns trying to garner these expressions.
Yeah, it must be quite a challenge to get all the expressions. One thing that I really like about the notion of the cake smash, as we think from a business model where every ideal business that has reoccurring revenue is the ideal business with some kind of reoccurring revenue that goes on. And when you think of newborn baby photography, you would kind of think it's one and done. But with the cake smash, you're getting that opportunity to have the customer come back. Are there more opportunities to keep that same customer coming back over time?
Well, yeah, because we skipped a little category between newborn and 1-year cake smash. If you check our website, it has the baby section, and that's where we cover what we call a sitter session. And that's for babies that are anywhere between 6 and 8 months when they're just starting to sit up on their own independently. And that's one of our, there you go. So that's probably one of our more popular sessions after newborn, right? Over cake smash.
Yeah.
I mean, we love it.
Yeah. So when a client is here and we mentioned that we have 2 other sessions after the newborn, for me personally, the sitter session is the best session.
Yeah.
Because I kind of have this running joke with they're sitting houseplants, but they give you expression. So they're not quite crawling yet.
Yeah.
They're and
you can set them there.
That stranger danger hasn't really set in, and you can just make weird noises and be goofy and get them to laugh. And so that is kind of, because they're not running off the set, basically, or crawling off for the most part. But so that's kind of my favorite one to photograph. And
yeah. So that, after newborn, we definitely have our, sitter session and our cake smash session, which are the two reoccurring revenue.
What, if you were to kind of take a guess, what percentage of your newborn clients go for the Grand Slam and they eventually come back for all 3 photo shoots?
I would say like maybe 20 to 25% might do all 3.
All 3, yeah. And I would say 60 to 65% do at least one.
At least one additional one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. I almost hesitate to ask this, but have you had any celebrities?
Yeah, we get athletes and celebrities and
many.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Really, yeah, I don't really think about it too much. Jess doesn't really. I have it on my calendar when we're shooting, but I don't really even look. So like I'll shoot and then I edit and then I deliver. And so Jess is handling all the upfront communication. And so sometimes she won't even tell me. I mean, I don't look at my calendar close enough to see like a name or anything. And sometimes it's in the wife's name. So if it's the husband's a celebrity, I don't know.
Yeah, that happens a lot actually.
No,
right.
They come in, you recognize you.
Right.
I had this one football player come in and I was like, man, this guy's big, and I said, and he had like a diamond encrusted necklace with a huge football on it. And I was like, I'm thinking college football? Like my brain is so into, I need to get the baby photograph. All I'm thinking about is how am I going to photograph the baby and have a little bit of dialogue with the parents to kind of make them feel at ease. But I noticed this massive, diamond football. Yeah. And I'm like, do you play ball or something? He's like, yeah. And I'm thinking, college, would you be, or I don't know, college would be too young, but, and he was like a major, huge football star. I'm like, oh my God, you're so-and-so. And so it was kind of fun for that. And then, some basketball players that, I've got a 7'3" basketball player, ducking into my.
Yes.
So it's fun.
A lot, just being in LA, we get a lot of entertainment, people as well.
Yeah, that's cool.
And a lot of music industry as well.
But it lends me to something I wanted to mention is for me, and I think for Jess, because Jess has the baby and I'm kind of talking with the parents as Jess takes the baby and starts to, swaddle him up and everything. And part of my enjoyment and why I love this job, of course, providing nice photos for baby or for parents is essential. But I love meeting people. I meet new people all the time from all different walks of life.
Different careers.
And it's just, getting to know people's story, to me, is probably the most fulfilling part of this, in addition to providing nice photos. Because I like to hear people say, oh, I like to hear people tell me how, this is their rainbow baby. They work so hard. This was their last shot at IVF. Yeah. And this one worked. Yeah. And, and then we can go into more depth on, their background and where they're from. And I just like to hear people's story and connect with them that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we are in a time right now where the commonly held belief is that it's practically impossible to make money as a photographer or make money with your camera. Stock photography used to be a big thing back in the film age where you could make a real living by taking stock photos. And then that was completely crushed. And now you've got everyone with a cell phone calling themselves a photographer. And as such, it's like a race to the bottom on pricing where paid photography is concerned. So with all of that said, have you been able to make a good living as professional photographers?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It can be done. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So well, school, it was like, how many years ago? 14 years ago.
14 years ago.
14 years ago, we, made a push for this. And it is our sole income. Both of us are devoted to this full time. So, there's a lot of photographers out there that do portrait photography or any genre of photography that it's maybe more of a side hustle or part-time. But we make very clear, not only on our website, but to our clients up front, that this is our full-time business. And we have been able to live very comfortably in Los Angeles. We own our own home and we go on vacations, and we generally have a very comfortable life.
Yeah,
Right?
it kind of wants me to talk about 2 points. One is our website is just newborn and baby up to 1 year. So we're not trying to be a jack of all trades.
Right.
So I think a lot of photographers kind of really do a disservice to them. I mean, like, create another website if you want to be a landscape photographer and then an architectural photographer. Just have 2 separate websites, maybe connect them through social media somehow. But when your client is looking for you, they're looking for that person, not one that does maybe a little bit of everything. And 2, all of our clients are very well educated. And so I think that because we're in LA, it's a little bit more expensive to live here than other parts of the country. It's just their understanding that they can't do it is very clear, right?
And the style that they're attracted
In
to.
the style that they want, they see what they want, and they go, yeah, I can't replicate this, or
Yeah.
they instantly know.
And I think just the amount of clients and the amount of inquiries that we have still coming in and have, over 14 years now, that it is no signs of slowing down for us. Of course, you have some months that maybe are a little slower, but we also have historically high months that are, January and October seem to be crazy busy, over the top, so many babies being born. But yeah, back to your original question, absolutely, you can make a wonderful life and a very comfortable income as a professional photographer. And our niche, that is, it's something that we're super proud of and we're able to continue doing. And it's no signs of slowing down either.
But it's not easy.
But it's it's hard work.
I mean, there's a lot of work that goes in before and after.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about getting customers, you have already mentioned that you use search engine traffic to drive traffic to your website where potential customers fill out a contact form and make an inquiry. Do you, aside from just search engine optimization, do you use any paid traffic?
We do not. We've never paid for Google ads, and we never have had any sort of paid advertising. The most I've ever done, this falls into my realm, is pay, I think, an extra $25 a month to Yelp just to have an expanded portfolio. But that's it. So we devote basically $0 to marketing.
I think I ran a Facebook ad one time for like $25.
Wow.
No.
That's awesome.
Don't get me wrong. There's definitely experts out there that can absolutely, especially for beginning photographers that maybe don't have, Google ranking or a Yelp, profile built up or reviews on Google business profile. There's definitely specialists that can help photographers, with paid ads, whether it's Google ads or, Facebook ads, social Instagram ads, that could definitely help. We just have never had to do that.
Right. So let's talk about equipment really briefly here. We won't get too much into it. One of the things that intrigued me a little bit is that on your website, you have an article that talks about what type of gear to use for photography. And you talk about the 50 millimeter, kind of the portrait lens, f1.2 or f1.4. Now, when you are shooting at f1.2, are you really shooting at f1.2? Because the depth of field is like not even half an inch.
Yeah. I never shoot at 1.2. I see photographers that shoot at 2.8, and I guess I've never really found the benefit. Of course, when I was shooting with a 5D Mark III, and now I'm to an R5, and so mirrorless is obviously the way to go. But I would get so many missed their back focus shots, or it would just miss focus. I'm an overshooter anyway, so I was like shooting sometimes 5, 6, 7, 800 shots just to make sure I nailed it, right? Because I'm not zooming in for every shot after I shoot it, and so I kind of I'm usually more like in this 3.5 to 5 range, and sometimes I'll even drop down to a 35 millimeter. It gives me a little bit more latitude with that, and so I'm not as concerned about that depth of field being at 1.2 or 1.4. Oh, you might have put it in. Okay. It's just, I'm sure some people do, but I'm so close to the subject that to shoot that shallow would just, not really, I don't really see the benefit.
Right. So if someone was starting out and you had to give them one recommendation for a lens, and I don't mean the brand of the lens, but just the focal length and how fast the lens is, like the f-stop, what would be your one and done? Here's the one lens you absolutely must have, and it'll probably do everything for you.
Probably the 50. Probably the 50, and just like in a 1.4 or 1.8, because you're not, you don't need to have a lens that fast, especially if you're shooting studio. So I would just go with the 50, and then you can add on to a 35 later if you wanted to. But the 50 will do everything.
Okay. And what about retouching? Do you use Lightroom Classic for your retouching, and kind of how much retouching do you do?
So I use Lightroom, I use Photoshop, and I retouch some of my own images, and I also have a retoucher. So it really depends on the volume that I have or that I'm backlogged. So I have a retoucher who, she knows the style that I like, we've gone over it many times. And so, if I have 3 sessions in a week and, let's just say all the orders come in and everyone wants additional photos, like my ability to, and our style has probably grown faster than my ability to retouch fast.
Right.
So I just can't do it from a time standpoint. So I have to outsource some of it. And so obviously if it's not the way I want it, I say, hey, I need this redone. But now with some of the AI tools, depending on the baby and depending on the skin or the skin tone, I can do it myself, extremely faster than I could before. So there's just kind of a balance between what I'm going to outsource and what I'm going to do in-house.
And how many files that they bought for that session. So if you had a full gallery buyout and they purchased all 140 images.
100 images, that's going to take me way too much time to do myself. It's better for me to just pay my retoucher to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's another question about your sessions. From the time your client walks in the door until they walk out the door, roughly on average, how long is that time?
So on average, in general, all our sessions start, and we only shoot on a weekday, so Monday through Friday, 10:30, right? So it's a great time. Parents arrive usually right at 10:30, and then we spend a little bit of time chit-chatting, getting to know each other. I walk them through like all of our, safety and sanitary precautions that we take for newborns, and just kind of show them around a little bit. And then I'd say we usually get started shooting by 10:45, 11 or so.
Yeah.
And then depending on the session, right? So we mentioned we have 3 sessions, a more of a condensed, entry-level session, and then a middle one, and one that includes family as well. Each of them have a certain amount of time assigned. So our mini swaddle session, I think we put an hour and a half.
60 to 90 minutes.
60 to 90 minutes. Yeah. So if we start shooting at 11, then, we're for that session, we're aiming for them to be out the door by 12:30. Yesterday, we had a baby that didn't sleep very well. So for a mini session, and they were here definitely longer than that, which is fine. We only book one a day. But then our middle and top tier packages, I would say anywhere from 2.5 to 3 hours. And, starting at 10:30, that's like finishing by 1:32, something like that.
Yeah. There are times where it goes long. I mean, from a personal standpoint of what I want to give to my client, like every single time we go into a session, it's not like you're punching a clock and going, oh, okay, your time's up or anything like that.
Yeah.
My job, and I get so passionate about it, our job is to deliver to the client. So I want to wow them. I want them to be so excited. I want them to have a difficult choice. Really, I want them to go, I can't decide. I'm going to get more, or I'm going to, I love them so much. I want them all.
Yeah.
So my job is to make their job difficult and have a good variety. So sometimes when we have a more challenging baby that's just not sleeping, or there could be colicky or any number of reasons, I'm not really going to go, look at my watch and go, time's up. We're going to keep pushing through until we can get the baby to settle a little bit more. So yesterday should have been a 90-minute session, and it ended up,
a little bit long.
A little bit long.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit longer. But it was all good. I mean, they're great returning clients, and, we're happy to do it.
Yeah. And we always say, because sometimes parents are like, oh, thank you so much for going over, and we're like, we shoot until we have a great variety to present as their proof gallery, right? So we want to feel comfortable. And oftentimes during the session, maybe towards the end, we're like, okay, let's do a quick review. Okay, we did, this prop with the cream, and then we did the green prop, and then we did, the neutral setup and this bear baby pose and parents. So we kind of like mentally, Matt will kind of flash, roll through your camera.
Yeah.
Okay, we got this. Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, yeah. Okay, one more. All right. We got a nice selection.
Make sure I have details covered. Make sure I have all my wide shots. Anything that they specifically requested. Because we do ask them for what kind of images that they want, and so then I'll have to review and go, oh, do we get the hand shot? Do we get the shot with the teddy bear or whatever it might be? And so, so we just kind of make sure we check off all the boxes on those.
Okay, so what would be your advice to someone who is listening and watching this interview? And let's just say that let's just paint the picture. Let's just say it's a new mom who has a baby herself, and she wants to create her own baby photography business. What would be your advice for her, assuming that she has good babysitting services from grandma?
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say probably first and foremost is, start to hone in on your style, what you like to do. I mean, like our style is different than our friend, over on the other side of town. She has a completely different style, and she's a very good photographer. But hone in on the style that you want. Don't go too crazy on buying. I mean, I'm telling you, these people go crazy buying props. I'm going to buy this prop, this, that.
In Newport.
And when you're just starting out, you don't even know if you're going to be able to do it. Like it might
use the prop effectively.
Well, use the prop, but you don't know if you're going to be able to really become a newborn photographer because it might take you 10 sessions before you realize that it's not for you. But I would say just keep it simple, right? The old adage, KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Just don't overdo it. Keep it as simple as possible. Just start with that 50, like I was mentioning earlier, and just maybe a few props, a few wraps, and just basics.
Yeah, basics. And I will touch on that, especially if there's any newborn photographers or baby photographers listening that are starting out. It's very easy to get caught up in the prop buying and the accessories and the hats and the headbands and the wraps because, you want to have variety, in your work, but you will soon find that after you purchase all these different accessories and props, you will only use a handful every single session. And those are the ones that you get good at and you keep using over and over again. So you don't need to buy tons of props and accessories. Just buy a handful of things and get good at using those. That would be my biggest advice from my posing side of it.
And because we have 500 headbands for girls. 100 at a pop. Cost $30, $40 each.
Don't need the money.
You don't need all the props. Okay, got it. Last question about lighting. So you mentioned that you use strobes. Is there, if you were starting out, could you get away with using like a constant video light with a softbox on it, or do you need a strobe?
I guess you could get away with it. I don't know that it puts out enough light. I don't have a lot of experience with continuous lighting for stills. So I've just become a strobe guy, and so that's kind of where I would kind of lean someone to. And there's some companies out there. I mean, I shoot pro photo equipment, but I would see there's a company called, I think it was a Pulsey Buff or something.
Yeah,
like this.
so a lot of newborn
A lot. I mean,
big.
Well, huge. I mean, they have like the lighting kits and whatnot, but just a large modifier, right? The larger the light source, closer to the subject, the softer the light. That's the other thing too, is see a lot of work. And I'm like, okay, it's I don't want to disparage anyone, but it's like, you gotta have that nice soft light. Babies are delicate, little human beings, and a nice soft wrapping light to create that shadow is, to me, extremely important. So some people have smaller modifiers, or it's just the light is just way too harsh. So I would say really kind of get that lighting honed down. Don't be afraid to move your light.
Yes.
Right. So I could have the same light and the same situation 100 times, but sometimes with the baby, if the baby's headed just a certain way, I got to move the light, or I got to move the basket, or I got to do something. So you cannot be afraid to move and move the light. If the baby's a little sensitive, but 2 or 3 inches can make a big difference.
Yeah.
In moving a light.
Okay. So let's end off with this one question. Did you have something, Jess?
No, I'm good. I just
Okay.
got, I don't shoot. So, but I am such a big fan of Matt's work and his eye and the way he mastered lighting especially for our newborns. And that's, I think, just a glaring, signature of our work.
Well, I think
The lighting.
I would have to say this. Sometimes we'll ask parents, how did you find us? Right. Instagram. And then what my biggest compliment is because I'm a man I'm a photographer, but I'm photographing babies, and it's kind of more female driven. Right.
Yeah.
But what'll happen is, we have our style, which we're probably not going to deviate from, because I don't want it to be too over the top. I want it to be a little bit more subtle.
Classic.
And classic.
Yeah.
And so we'll have clients that come in and the wife will say, I showed them these 3 newborn photographers. You were one of them, and showed them to my husband.
Yeah.
And the husband always picks me. Or that's great.
Yeah.
Feedback I get. He picked you. And it's because
They just knew right away that our style was what they were
it
looking
was
for.
resonating with the husband, especially.
Nothing.
Whether it's a boy or a girl.
No cheesy, props or themes. It's just like very beautifully lit classic work. So that's why they choose us, and they know right away.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. So let's end off with addressing that husband. So let's just say that you're talking to a young couple, they've just had a baby, it's 1 week old, and mom is trying to convince dad that they need to spend the money on a newborn photo shoot, but he's saying, money is too tight right now. I really don't feel that we can justify this expense. My cell phone is good enough anyway. What's your advice to dad who is kind of putting the brakes on for the photo shoot?
You want to answer that?
No, you always say,
What do I say?
at the end of the sessions when you were like, honestly, like we don't think twice about going out to dinner and, spending the money on, or here in LA, we drop a couple $100 on a sushi dinner, right? But like when it comes to your baby and wanting to document and never forget these special time in their lives and in your lives, that think about it when you're comparing it to, like, do you want to devote any of your dollars to that versus getting a Starbucks every day? Of course it's more expensive, but the theory is there, right?
Yeah, it's just kind of, where are your priorities? I mean, obviously not in the room when the husband and the wife are making the decision, but I kind of use this analogy a little bit when it comes to maybe purchasing additional photos. So like, I love a sushi dinner. We'll go out, and my son now eats like an adult, so it costs me a lot of money. And so I have to ask myself, I'm going to forego something else if I'm going to have that sushi dinner. And it's kind of the same with photos, right? You have to make the choice. Like, are you going to invest in photos with a reputable photographer, or are you going to spend your money somewhere else? And so
I think there's also something to be said, and I was just talking to another photographer about this last night, is that as parents, it's so important to realize the importance of your children seeing photos of themselves and seeing how loved they are from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So making that upfront commitment of showing your kids or having these beautiful photos for your children to see and displaying them in your home and on the walls, and they walk by it, it builds such a beautiful like family love and confidence that like, I am an important part of this family and I'm being displayed all over this house. My parents love me so much,
Yeah, you're showing your child for the duration of their lifetime that they have been loved from the very, very start. So we will close it on that. I love your photos. I am so impressed by the quality of them. Like, as soon as I saw your website with the photos on it, it was like, wow, I need to interview Matt and Jessica because your photos are just so incredible. So thank you so much for being a guest on the show. And if anyone has any questions, they can visit your website at mattcramerphotography.com. Thanks to both of you so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate it.